we are going to talk about cell organelles. So we're looking right now at an animal cell. That's all we're focused on right now. We said that a cell is the smallest unit of life. So if you are living, think about your body. You have things inside of your body that work together so that your body can do what it's supposed to do. So those are called organs, like your heart, your lungs, your pancreas, your liver, things like that. Cells are the same way. So they're not just empty. A living cell's not just empty. It's got things inside of it that work together so the cell can perform its functions too. And those are actually organs as well, but they're really tiny. So those are called organelles. So we're going to look at some of those today. I've drawn some up here already that we're not going to talk about. You're not going to be responsible for knowing, but I'd like to just mention them really quickly, just sort of what they are. And this drawing is very accurate, as usual. So this is the endoplasmic reticulum, or the ER. This part is the rough ER because it's got like little dots on it. Those dots are ribosomes, and ribosomes are just like things that make proteins. And proteins do a bunch of stuff that are necessary for life functions. So this part of the ER is called the smooth ER because it doesn't have any ribosomes on it. It's very smooth. This is the Golgi apparatus, or the Golgi body, and it'll ship out, sort, and package proteins, which again comes from the ribosomes, or comes from the ER. The ribosomes make proteins. And then we have, this is called the Centriole, and these things coming out from it are just like spindle fibers. And we'll talk about those later this year, but that pretty much has a lot to do with like the reproduction of the cell itself. So if you scratch, you get a scratch on your arm, then like you don't have just a gaping hole for a long time. If it's just a little cat scratch or something, your cells build back up and they cover that up. That has something to do with that. So we'll talk about that later in the year. I just wanted to mention those really quickly. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is this whole section around it. That whole entire circle part is like the skin of the cell. It's like the outside of the cell. It's called the cell membrane. Or it's called the plasma membrane. I call it plasma membrane most of the time, but I'll just write cell here. I know it's hard to see in this video. But the cell, or the plasma membrane, and that's sort of like the skin of the cell. It's the outermost part of all animal cells. And what's really cool about it, which we'll talk about a lot this year, is it sort of looks like this. You can think of it like this because it's got little tiny pores on it, or little openings on it, that sort of act like doors. So it decides what can come in and out of the cell. It's just like a door to the classroom. If I need to go out the door, I just open it and go through. If I wanted to bring an elephant in the room, that would be a little more difficult because it can't fit through the door. That's sort of the way this works too. So it's got the cell membrane, the skin of the cell. So you also have pores on your skin, just like in the cell membrane, and that determines what can go in and out through your skin. Small things like gases can diffuse easily. You're not going to like lose your bone out of your pore in your skin. Okay, if you have a bone coming out of your skin, you've got something else going on. So it doesn't just naturally happen. The next thing I want to talk about is all this stuff. This white background is actually stuff. It's part of the cell, and it's called the cytoplasm. And the cytoplasm is just the gel-like stuff inside of the cell. It's where all these organelles, everything inside is suspended. It's where they're located. So the cytoplasm is just like the inside of the cell. So the next organelle, the next part of the cell, the next organ of the cell, I'm going to draw right here. It's right in the middle of the cell, in my cell, and it is where pretty much everything happens. Everything's processed at. So it's like your brain, but in the cell. So this is called the nucleus. And the nucleus is the brain of the cell. It's where all of the functions happen. It's the control center. So if we need to make something to help the cell do its job, the nucleus is sort of in charge of that. It tells everybody what to do. The next one, do a different color, that I want to talk about going to draw in a bunch of different places, and I'm coloring it, I'm making it red. And this is called the mitochondria. So, it really bothers me because you learn, people usually tell you mitochondria is that, but it's not. Mitochondria is all of this. So that's the plural version. That just bothers me. Singular is mitochondrion. I like to teach you that because it just drives me crazy. Um, but we always say mitochondria because cells usually have a bunch of these. They have several. And what the mitochondria do is they work to take the energy or take the food that the cell takes in and turn it into energy. This is my favorite organelle because it lets you eat. That is so important. If we didn't have the mitochondria, there'd be no sense in having food because we couldn't turn that into energy, so we would have no need to eat. So that's my favorite. The next one I want to talk about, I'll draw. No, I'll draw this. I'm making it blue because that's the color I grabbed. It makes no difference. And this is a storage organelle. So it's going to store water, waste, nutrients, things that the cell doesn't need right now but probably will need later. It's called the vacuole. I always tell everybody to remember that. It's like the refrigerator of the cell. So if you take in a lot of water and you're like, your cell's like, well, I don't need it yet, but I know that water is good. I need to keep a little bit of it. Then it'll store it in the vacuole and it'll just release it whenever your cell needs it. The last one I want to talk about really quickly, I'll use green. And I only talked about this one because I like it. I'll draw it right here. And there's several of them. This is called the lysosome. And what the lysosome does, if you know the prefix lys, L-Y-S or L-Y-S-E, that means to break. So this thing breaks stuff down. It's sort of like the trash compactor or the garbage disposal of the cell. So any kind of waste or bacteria or viruses, things that come into the cell, the lysosome takes care of that. They work to break down and get rid of that stuff. So things that don't fit in the vacuole or that the cell says, I don't need that, or it's gross, or I have too much, I want to get rid of it, the lysosome will come around and it'll take care of that. It'll break it down and get rid of it so that way it can exit the cell. So this is all the organelles we will talk about for an animal cell. When we talk about a plant cell here shortly, there'll be a couple extra organelles that we will add on. But keep this in mind. If you want to, take a picture of this or draw it out yourself because this is definitely going to be something that we talk about a lot, and it's really important to know all these organelles.